Welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name is Eva and you are listening to Maritime Unity Talks. Today we will talk with the legendary Kim Asher about authenticity. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Eva. It's so nice to see you again. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, very nice to have you on the show and very honored to talk with you today about this subject of being your authentic self. So
It's a really important thing, isn't it?
it is.
It's a hard place to get to.
Definitely. Yes, I think for all of us. So before we dive into the subject, can you please tell us something about yourself?
As Eva said, I'm Kimberly Asher, Kim, and I am, so far as I know, certainly the most out loud and proud transgender woman working in offshore construction. I spent about 3,000 days on construction vessels around the world. I've done a lot of different stuff in my time, both offshore and before that in industry. And now I live in Taiwan, but I'm not a one-dimensional creature. I'm not the token transgender woman in the industry. I run a number of quite large projects. I make all my own dresses, which is a skill I've built up this year. I produce music and make cocktails and do all kinds of stuff. I also write algorithms. So I've got a lot of tricks up my sleeve. And my battle to attain authenticity took a long time, but it was worth it.
That's really good to hear. And also, I'm very much looking forward to talk with you about this. And I think we can see on your background a little bit about your music and extreme things that you're doing. And I knew you already for some time right now. And I think it's just so amazing to see your perspective on things and the things you're doing. And it's very amazing.
It's quite true. I didn't even plan this or think about it. I'm in the process of moving around things in my office. I'm thinking of moving it next door into the other part of the apartment. But yes, it's got lots of elements of who I am in here. I built this computer a few months ago. I've got a bit of lighting set up here and the microphones for my own YouTube and creative content, the music production I get into, the dress that I've made myself. It's all big elements of my personality condensed into the screen at the moment, so it's quite fun. But it's wholly unintended.
Oh, that's really fun. And it's also nice to see. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see. But if you're listening to this, then you can, I think, imagine how Kim's place looks. It looks really nice.
A chaotic clutter of creative madness. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's nice. At least I think it's nice to meet colorful persons and with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Let us introduce the topic of today a little bit, because we want to talk about is being able to be your authentic self. And also, I think you very much explained already how you then can be creative. Also, let your mind go and let your body experience things, and that you can be part of the world. I think part of a team or part of your own life, maybe even. I think it would be nice to introduce people about the relating subject, and that is to be safe, right? Because I think when you want to be your authentic self and creative, then you need to be safe. It relates to what many organizations and teams and governments maybe even want these days, and that is to be inclusive and diverse. When you want to be inclusive and diverse, you need this safety. You need to provide safety for people to be their authentic self, right?
I think that's a really insightful perspective, because authenticity, if you really want to be authentic, in fact, let's flip it around. Let's turn that upside down. And I'm judging from my own journey towards authenticity. And that is the reason that I did not transition decades ago. The reason I didn't do a lot of things in my life a long time ago was fear. And fear is obviously the opposite of safety, or the belief that you're not safe. And I think the vast majority of people live inside a prison inside their own minds. And it's a completely artificial prison. Those walls don't exist. The bars are not there. but the patterns of our lives, the conditioning that we get, whether it's through religious indoctrination, whether it's through inherited values from parents and grandparents, or political views, or whatever it is, they all create these structures, but the structures end up becoming prison walls. They become a rule book that you internally judge yourself against all the time. And the net impact of that, I think, is to make you feel unsafe about stepping outside of that and exploring the world enough to become who you should have been if you had been given a chance to grow into yourself.
That's a really interesting way of telling it. I hope at least that a lot of people will recognize what we are saying here. So I think to make it really easy to understand is that, first of all, you have this internal voice, right? It's inside your head, and it speaks to your heart. And it tells you, you cannot do this. You cannot act this way. You cannot speak this way. You cannot be like this, because then it will be dangerous. You will be maybe banned from your community. You will be bullied. There will be consequences for this. But that's an internal thing. It goes from your head to your heart and back from your heart into your head. And it will save you a lot of times, maybe. It will prevent you from getting into trouble or getting exiled. This process of your nervous system, I think, is saving you a lot of times. But also it prevents you from being yourself, like the stays in your heart that you know that is you. And then second of all, I think you also have this community around you who communicates also things like this. So, for example, I was born as a girl, climb into trees or play in the mud or sit with my legs like this, like a boy. And then I would hear, no, you cannot sit like that. You are a girl. So you have to behave like a girl, because otherwise what?
Yeah. Gender is one of the main conditioning systems that we all have inflicted on us. But it's not just that. There's a lot of it. And I think I heard a great expression a year or two ago. Tradition is just dead people telling us what to do, right? And a lot of the structures in society are based on traditions, whether girls dress like this, boys dress like that, or you can't go, like even it can go down to community levels. Somebody I used to know a long time ago, they grew up in a very remote part of Newfoundland in Canada, which is where my father's from, funny enough. And she was telling me that as a little girl, the school bus would go from village to village, picking up like two or three children here, two or three there. And they would sit on one part of the bus, and they were told by their family to never speak to the people in 2 seats behind them, because they're from that village, and that village is really poor, and don't speak to the really poor people. But actually, in relative terms, they all had nothing. They were all like it's a really economically deprived part of the world. And I know that this family growing up, this friend of mine growing up, they literally had nothing. But the people down the road has even a little bit less. And therefore there was this hierarchy that was emerging. And so there are so many things that we're taught, don't do this or should do that. And all of it's artificial. All of it's not all of it. Some of it's, very little bit of it's there for good reason. But most of it's artificial.
Yeah, and by artificial, I think you mean that somebody thought of this, right? Somebody wrote it down, or it was like a tradition which was told from mouth to mouth, or family, like we always do it like this, so it should be like this.
Yeah, the repetition. We are creatures, we're pattern recognition engines to walk around. That's what we are. And the more we recognize a pattern, the more it becomes something that just becomes behavior. If your parents have told you that this is the right pattern for you, girls wear skirts, boys wear blue, that kind of stuff. Or don't speak to those people, or you should try and speak to those people, or you go to that church, or you don't go to this church. And all of that stuff, that which is a pattern, it's echoes that repeat and repeat. Yeah. And when you start thinking about why do I have to do all of this stuff?
It gives you also the sense of safety, I think, right? This pattern. So it was there for a reason, apparently. And it feels nice and safe to have the same repetitive pattern all the times. But it's good that you mentioned that you also then need to think a little deeper into, is this still working for us right now?
Depression, I don't like to keep referring to my transition like it's this magic thing, but I think from one perspective, it's one of the most profound transformations that a human being can go through. And we go through it against all of the conventions of society, against all of the value systems that are indoctrinated against us. And our internal narratives challenge us from doing it and prevent us from doing it. And certainly in my generation, 50 years old, the amount of convention that I had to break through and challenge all of that was an enormous amount. And so I don't think that for any other reason than the sheer volume of conventions and prison walls I had to break through, that's what makes the journey quite special and a good reference point for me. Because when I compare that, because everyone has their own journey, everyone has their own challenges, but when I compare mine to other people's, I can see the same path to authenticity they have to go through. And it might not be for them about whether they were born in the wrong anatomy, the wrong body. But it might be something else, like they were born into a religion they don't agree with, or they're gay, or they struggle to accept the values of their family and they wanted to not be a doctor, or they wanted to go and do this. Whatever it is, those are challenges for them. And it's the similar journey of challenging the patterns, the prison walls, the internal narrative, the community, the expectations, and just saying, actually, who am I? Because it ain't that.
Yeah, that's so interesting you said that. And also, because I think what's most visible, because it makes visible what's happening for all of us, I think. And it also makes visible how incredibly brave it is to be visible like this out in the open. And I think that's deserved, first of all, big respect. So that's for you.
Thank you. But it's funny because part of that, my journey started from a place of profound depression where, as an adult, as a child, I had my own experiences of realizing I was transgender. And then testosterone hit my body and everything got muddied for a while. But as an adult, when that pressure built up and I realized it was masked by a thick layer of depression, like really deep depression, self-ending levels of depression. And when I was reading and trying to understand what depression is, I read a fascinating book and it literally talks about repeating a smaller circle of behavior until your ability to cope with anything diminished down to like virtually nothing. Like a record with a scratch that keeps repeating the same again and again, right? And the way we lose the ability to step outside the comfort zone, and the way to solve depression, or one of the ways of handling parts of it, is to challenge your comfort zone and just try and do a little bit of something that you wouldn't feel otherwise comfortable to do. Small things. Maybe it's, maybe I'll get out of bed before 10 o'clock today, or maybe it's actually, I'll go outside to the shop and buy some coffee because I haven't been outside the house for 3 days, or whatever it is. That little push past the boundaries of comfort is what helps you heal again. And the process of becoming authentic is pushing past those boundaries again and again to the point where there are no boundaries, there are no prison walls. You have literally walked through the walls of the prison in your head because you realize they don't exist. And so that's what authenticity is about, I think. It's almost like a complete and utter healing away from depression. And you might not even realize you'll see the similarity of it with depression, but conventional, narrow behavior patterns that have been defined for you, that you exist within, I think has a lot of similarities to depression. And the process of getting out of it is to step past them, challenge them, and a little bit more every day until eventually you just are that person you should have been.
Yeah, very well explained. I think, I like the perspective. Yes, because for me, when you talked about that, it made very insightful how your system protects you. So if you make space in your head like very tiny, then it feels safe in a way. And then, because if you're scared, you don't want to see everything, right? You just want to, or you want to see everything. Like you will put on a light, you can see the room that you're in, and you don't have to be scared for anything. But actually, you can realize that you cannot see outside the room. But if you think about that, it will make you scared again. So you will just stay really close.
Yeah.
Find. Yeah, that's very well explained. And I think what is the solution is like the fear paradox, because then you have to go through the fear that you have, that you're afraid of most. Like, for example, getting a coffee. But why didn't you do that for 3 days? Because you were scared of something.
You didn't want to go outside. You didn't want people to see you. You didn't want to emerge from the safe shell of your house, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. So it requires you to take this courageous step outside and actually go through your fear and face it. But that's a lot of work.
It is, and maybe you go out. Yeah, the first day you get to outside the front door, and you only go one step, and then you turn around and say this is too much, and you go back and close the door again. But you took a step, and you went outside, and it was a start. And everything starts with small steps. Yeah, and I think to round this up a little bit, in conclusion, I think maybe I want to dive a little bit into the difference between recognizing if this is actual anxiety that has a reason, because you will be dead or something, it will protect you from your life, or it's anxiety, or it's like intuition. So then you have to get coffee because it will make you better. It's like a very calm, intuitive feeling from inside. Okay. And it feels scary, but the outcome will be okay. And then if you do it, and if you recognize that you're not actually dead, you can grow from there. Because then next time you say, no, this will not have any consequence. I can just go outside and have coffee without any negative consequences. Then you can grow, right? So what do you think is the difference between these two? Because sometimes you can be anxious or scared of something, which can be very dangerous. Yeah, I think it genuinely is dangerous, for example, to be transgender. There are 71 countries in the world where I can be put in prison. 9 of them I can be put to death just for existing. And even in so-called countries where it's legal, the violence, the assault, the murders, the attacks verbally or physically on us in a lot of so-called civilized countries are escalating to terrible levels. But it shouldn't stop you living your life, because if that's what stops you living your life, then you're not living your life. And that's throwing it away. I would rather burn in the sun for 10 years than live for 1,000 years in darkness. And there was a great book. It was like a fantasy novel I read years ago. I think it was called The Blade Itself or something. And there was one of the main characters who just had a reputation for, he was a hero, but he wasn't like a real hero. He was like a very interesting character complex. And he said, it's better to do the thing that you're scared of than to focus on the fear of the thing. So just do it, and then you won't be scared of it anymore. Because it's the fear that grips you. It's the fear that paralyzes you. But if you just do it, there's no fear anymore. You get past the fear because you've done it. And I think becoming comfortable with discomfort, get comfortable with not being comfortable. And how do you find out the things that really are genuinely dangerous? Experience. As a woman, I'm not going to walk down a dark alleyway at night in a city that I know has bad crime rates, 3 o'clock in the morning, clattering around in high heels and just waiting to be a victim. I'm going to make more informed decisions, but they're decisions based on the fact that I know that's putting myself in a risky situation. But it's not going to stop me being who I am. That's very good to say. Thank you so much for
putting that so obvious and explaining that this way. Yeah, it's amazing. So thank you for explaining. I hope that many of us listening today will recognize this. And also, again, if you're seeing this or listening to this and you want to dive a little bit deeper or leave your comment or reach out to us, feel very welcome to do. I think the next episode that Kim and I will record is about red flags and abuse. So then we can dive a little bit more into this very, very interesting topic, so to say.
It's a natural extension, isn't it, of where we are? Your last question was about how do you decide what's a real fear and what isn't?
Yes.
The red flags is where you start to do that.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to dig more into this subject together. So thank you for listening today. You have been watching Maritime Unity with myself, Eva, and Kim. And please tune in again next time for the next episode.